What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. This week we are back in my office/guest room because we had this big storm come. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but basically suffice it to say I have no childcare today, and so I'm recording from home while my children are supposed to be napping. Don't worry, my husband is in charge of the baby monitor for the next hour or so, and that's when I'm going to film this video, but I'm sorry if you can hear them. So I put a poll out on Instagram late last night when I learned that childcare would be closed today, inviting you all to share what the advantages and disadvantages of being a therapist are. In an ideal world, I would spend a while kind of compiling all this info in an Excel spreadsheet and kind of sharing the data with you. But frankly, I just don't have time because I gotta squeeze it all in during my daughter's naps, if they nap today. So let's dive straight into people's responses for the advantages of being a therapist. In the first response, they say, being your own boss. Yes, I love being my own boss. And one could make an argument that you could have the option of being your own boss in any number of professions, in a lot of professions, but that's certainly an advantage of being a therapist if you choose to. And then a couple of kind of quick fire responses. Someone says rewarding and flexible schedule. And again, maybe this might end up being a theme and the advantages here, because as I'm reading rewarding, I'm thinking maybe does that kind of depend though on where you're working as a therapist? Flexible schedule, does that depend on where you're working as a therapist? Okay, I'm starting to see a theme here. The next response says having the flexibility to create your own schedule and your own work-life balance. Again, this kind of sounds like somebody who might be in more of like a private practice type setting. If you run your own business, or maybe if you work in a group practice, you might tend towards feeling like there's a lot more flexibility. But on the flip side, if you are working at an agency or a county funded space, you're working more for an employer, then it tends to kind of swing the other way where there's not much flexibility at all. Let me know if that's true or not. And another person says flexibility, so many different job opportunities and settings. That is so true about being a therapist. There are so many different kinds of jobs that you can work as a therapist. I don't even know what they all are, honestly. So yes, it's very flexible as far as where you go once you become a therapist. The next reply says, you get to hear people's real stories and you get to be a part of their life journey. Agreed. You get in on people's secrets that they may not tell anybody else, and it feels highly privileged. Someone says, flexible schedule. Also, I love witnessing clients achieve growth and celebrating that. Okay, so here we go again. We got flexibility and witnessing people make progress, which is, yes, it is one of the most rewarding things. There's something about when you see that client achieve the goal that they were after when you first met with them, that they felt like was impossible. And oh, that's like the best feeling. The next response says, help you deeply connect to yourself and the world. Now, this one also feels like it depends if there's enough margin in the type of workspace that you're working in that you have kind of the privilege of being able to self-reflect and work on yourself. It really does pull for that because you're going to see clients in a situation that really challenge your worldviews. Things that I found myself being more judgy about, I would never do that. I could never imagine somebody doing that, such a terrible thing. And then you see the real stories of what's going on for somebody when they're in that situation, and it forces you to either double down on your judginess or to really call into question, is my perception really accurate then? Have I been seeing this all wrong? Am I missing part of the picture when I have that judgmental reaction? And the next response says, feeling like you have a purpose. Yes, I sure hope so. Okay, the next one is interesting. It says, I can treat my own injuries. Now, at first glance, I kind of feel like, oh, let's be careful about treating our own injuries. If we go too far in the land of I don't need to see a therapist because I am a therapist, that can get real sticky real quick. We all need somebody else to hold up the mirror for us and kind of say, did you realize that this is what you're doing? But all that said, I first got into the field of therapy because I treated myself for severe panic disorder, and I learned about CBT, systematic desensitization, and I performed it on myself, and it was extremely effective, and I was sold. So I guess it depends. Again, it depends. Everything depends. Oh, I like the next advantage. They say, you don't have a typical day, it always looks different. Yeah, I appreciate that every day. You never know what you're gonna get until your clients show up in front of you. There's always something new. And someone else says, helping others, etc., but also normalizing your own life struggles and work-life balance. I like that statement, normalizing your own life struggles. That has definitely been true for me as I help clients with compassion through whatever it is that they have going on. if I at some point have a variation of a similar experience in my life, it's a lot easier for me to internalize that same self-compassion. All right, so that rounds out all the advantages that folks named. And if that was all there was to it, it sounds really nice. Like, sign me up. We're about to move on to the disadvantages, but first I just wanted to say thank you for hanging with the background noises. I'm like 98% sure you can hear my kids in the background this whole time. So let's see what some of the disadvantages people name are. Navigating the business side of being self-employed. So again, we're seeing probably the bias that a fair amount of my followers are in private practice. They might be getting started in private practice, but definitely if you're in private practice, navigating the business side of things is its own challenge for sure. The next response says easy burnout, especially in the beginning years without proper mentorship. Ooh, it's so sad and true. We're most prone to burning out, I think, in those early years when we're just trying to get our bearings. We're probably the least financially stable in those early years, and we're also needing the most kind of hand-holding. And if we don't have good supervision, mentorship, even once we're licensed, just kind of bosses and things like that, it can be much more likely that we burn out. And the next response says some isolation in private practice. Yes, folks who work in private practice are extremely prone to isolation. You don't have any peers or colleagues that you're interacting with unless you're intentional about creating spaces for that to happen. Okay, the next one is a list of disadvantages: funding, insurance, people's views and opinions. If you're navigating insurance, that certainly is challenging, or getting funding. If you're working in like an agency type setting, it seems to be like ever shrinking funds, which means that you have to work more just to earn the same income. It can be a mess. And then, people's views and opinions. On the one hand, with the advantages, it's like, oh, you can expand your worldview to be more accepting of different views and opinions if they don't align with yours. But on the flip side, if you're not quite ready for it, or, if there really is some kind of harm or injustice, it's really difficult to help them. So that is definitely a disadvantage. The next person names as a disadvantage insurance reimbursement and odd hours. Oh, if you're working in private practice and you bill to insurance, it kind of can be hit and miss how smoothly the insurance reimbursement goes. Okay, the next person has a couple things that they list. Work-life balance, which they're saying this is a disadvantage when we just heard some other folks say that it was an advantage. So I think that's painting the picture that I was saying of like, it depends on where you work. They also say it can be intense content and sessions to manage. Yes, it is really important to have boundaries on your schedule, boundaries with how many folks with intense trauma you might be working with, or how much trauma you work with if you're navigating your own trauma or secondary trauma or burnout, etc. And there's not always the privilege to be able to kind of control your schedule to that extent, depending on where you work. And that is a massive disadvantage. And the next response says vicarious trauma. You didn't necessarily go through a trauma yourself, but because you've heard about a client's trauma experience or a collective, series of traumas amongst your clients, now you are starting to show the signs of someone who has been through the trauma themselves just by hearing about it. That is something to monitor very closely. We are now recording on my computer screen because my iPhone ran out of storage. You can definitely see that I'm wearing jammies now on the bottom, but the show must go on. Oof, the next response is a little sad to read. Feeling lonely since friends or family don't understand your profession. Despite all the strides we've made in kind of becoming more progressive around mental health care, there is still so much stigma around it. The next response says empathy fatigue and burnout. Yeah, okay, so we're definitely hearing the burnout. And if you're not familiar with empathy fatigue or compassion fatigue, it's basically when you spend so much of your energy like giving outwards towards others, but there's not an equal balance of energy coming in, that then you just run on fumes and you burn out. You're just giving too much care to other people, and you also need care too because you're a person. We're all a person. If you want an assessment tool to help you with that, I love the ProQOL because it kind of catches the nuance of like, oh, there's maybe some compassion fatigue here, even though you aren't hitting burnout levels yet. So you can kind of watch for where it's starting to pop up and make changes accordingly. Okay, and the next response definitely opens up a new category of response in these disadvantages. They say, people think you should be able to apply what you do to your personal life. We can't be on all day. So true. That's kind of like saying that someone who's a doctor should have like no medical ailments. No amount of introspection and isolation of other humans is going to allow you to catch all of your blind spots. We're all human. We need other people to help us hold that mirror up for us and point those things out. All right, and the next one brings up a doozy: poor pay, poor benefits working in a corporate setting. You might say, well, you're making more than kind of the average person. What are you complaining about? But also, you have to go to school for a really long time. You have to accrue a lot of debt in a lot of cases, sometimes upward of 6 figures or more. And so you might be, not young anymore with a huge pile of debt, and you're only just starting to earn this income, and it's much lower than what other folks are earning who've gone through a similar amount of training. Oh, yeah, this one's a rough one to read, and it's true. Always learning and expanding on the endless ways humans suffer. It's like just when you think you've heard everything, there's always going to be somebody else who has a different flavor or kind of suffering that you just had never fathomed existed. And you have to hold space for that. It's in your mind now. And that can, again, lead to compassion fatigue, can lead to secondary trauma as well. So that is a lot to hold. Whew, the next one's a little tough. Pressure to be more productive and more like a robot. It's not the employer's fault typically, but like the systems in play, the insurance companies, whoever's funding the client care is running out of funds. And so you have to get more stuff done in less time, which is just not possible. So it's absolutely an issue. The next person says, hard to stay present with clients when going through a hard time yourself. Yes. And the next person says dual roles, owner and lead clinician, dealing with insurance, so much more. And again, this is definitely the case if you are owning your own business, that you're wearing the hat of business owner and also therapist and also billing insurance, and it can be a lot. And the last disadvantage is the documentation and the emotional toll of containing others' hurt emotions. You get to the end of the day of seeing a bunch of clients, the last thing you want to do is pull out a file, open up a computer screen, and type all about what you just did. You want to go home and take a nap probably, or see your family or whatever it is you got going. Whew. Well, that was a whole lot of responses. Hopefully the way that I edit this kind of makes sense so it doesn't have to be too long of a video. I appreciate all of you for sending in your responses. For folks who are thinking about entering the therapy profession, hopefully this illuminates some of the advantages and disadvantages. And also for those of you already in the therapy profession, hopefully helps you feel validated and maybe encourages you to reach out and also seek some tools if you're dealing with some of the disadvantages that other folks are going through as well. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes helps with all of your practice management needs, from scheduling to notes to billing. They have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform and so much more. If you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Well, I hope you found this video helpful, whether you're a therapist or not. If you are a therapist and there's an advantage or disadvantage that didn't get listed in this video, leave a comment below, because I know folks go through and read those and can really be helped by your experience as well. And until next time, from one therapist to another, or maybe a potential therapist, I wish you well.